Wake that ass up
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest on the line, Dr. Emanuel. Good morning.
Hey, nice to be here.
What's up, Doc? You know, it just dawned on me, and I don't know why it just dawned on me, that Ram, Emanuel, and Ari Emanuel are your brothers. I am ordering your book today to Brother Emanuel, because that dynamic is so intriguing to me. How all of y'all end up successful?
How? Competition, man. You know that.
Really? But all of y'all went in such different career paths, though. You're in medicine, Ram with the politics, Ari's in Hollywood, like.
Yeah, that's because if we all went into something similar, the whole thing would blow up.
Got you. Got you. So what's your opinion?
And that's also why one of us lives in California, one of us lives in Chicago, and one lives on the East Coast, because if we got too close, man, you know what happens. Nuclear bomb.
Do y'all get along at least? Are y'all good? Are y'all cool? Or?
Oh, we talk every day. Yesterday, I talked to Ari probably 20 times. Sunday, Ram and I reviewed what books we're reading and exchanged ideas on COVID.
So Ari's probably calling you because he's like, look, man, this is really affecting Hollywood. Hollywood is shut down. When is this going to be over?
Not just Hollywood, sports, concerts, everything, man. It's a real problem.
So what is your view? What is your view on everything and how this country handled everything? Let's break it down.
Well, we certainly screwed up right at the start. You're now getting evidence that the first deaths were in California probably in January, well before anyone anticipated. We've obviously had a whole series of problems on testing. And we have this horrible, horrible recession. We have to get people back to work. But the only way you're going to get people back to work is by taming this virus. So it's a vicious circle.
What about the city? Do you think it's time to go back to work? Do you think this is the time? Do you think that we should be opening the country now? Because you said we're in a recession, but is this the time to do that?
I don't think so. I don't think we're ready. We don't have enough testing out there. We haven't gotten the number of new cases down far enough. So I think places like Georgia and South Carolina and Texas are rushing into this, and I think they're going to see a big resurgence and a big flare of new cases that I'm really worried about.
Do you think it's a good idea for some states like Wyoming or North Dakota? Is it okay for them to open now, or do you think that they still have to wait also?
Well, it's a real interesting question. They seem to have a low number of cases, and from a public health standpoint, you always got to worry. Do you have a low number of cases because you haven't tested, or because you actually have a low number of cases? The flare up in South Dakota at that meat processing plant make you worry that there's a lot of stuff out there that we're not detecting because we're not testing.
Right.
Well, you keep mentioning testing, and Doc. What's your opinion of the state of testing, and where do we need to be? Where do we need testing to be in order to start easing the lockdown?
That's a really good question. We're at about 130,000 Americans get tested every day, and I keep reminding people we got 330 million Americans. That's like nowheresville. So we need to be up in the 2 million, 3 million range per day. That's 15-fold what we're doing today. So we got to have a lot of it, and we don't have enough of it. It's just that simple.
And Dr. Emanuel, what about the CDC saying that in the winter they do expect a second round that's going to be even worse than what we've experienced now with the flu and then with another coronavirus pandemic?
That is scary stuff. I think it's a real worry, and they think that everything is going to, you're just going to have two punches instead of one. And I think that is it's all the more reason we've got to actually get this virus tamed and not take our eye off of trying to get therapies, trying to get vaccines. And hopefully people will, do this physical distancing, wear a mask, wash their hands, all the things we know that make a big difference.
And what about the thing that people are saying? Yeah, Sean.
Now, I said, what treatments are on the horizon that offer the best chance at the moment of being effective against corona? Is it the plasma stuff they're talking about? What is it?
Almost every week someone's going to something else on the hope. As I like to say, the only really effective treatment is what is probably going to be one that's designed for coronavirus, and that's going to take more months to develop. because the things we're trying, we're just pulling them off the shelf and trying anything, like that malaria drug, like that viral drug remdesivir, which has been around for 15 years. Those aren't, they might work, but they're unlikely to work. More likely, this plasma transfusion, that may work. We've tried that, and we know that works in other conditions, but you can't give that to tens of thousands of people. You can do a few hundred people in each hospital. So we need something that's more like a pill, or as I've argued, we're probably going to have to, like HIV, you got to take 3 pills, 3 different medicines a day. Now we've got them in one pill. But in this case, we might need a couple of different kind of medications and get them to work together against the virus.
Now, what about, in January, February, a lot of people were coming down with some of these symptoms, flu-like symptoms and trouble breathing and all the symptoms that sound like coronavirus. And a lot of people think they might have had the coronavirus. Are there any ways to check that so hopefully people can't get it again if that's possible?
Antibodies.
Well, there are 2 good points there, man. One is we don't have a great test yet to test whether someone's immune from the coronavirus. We need that. Lots of people are working on it. They're called serology tests or antibody tests. But, people are trying them, but we don't have anyone that's proven really good. The second thing we don't know is you have the antibodies. Does that protect you from being infected again? Are you really immune? We assume the antibodies make you immune, but it might not be the case. And we have to prove that out. So we got 2 problems: no good tests, and we don't even know that if we had a test, that what the test is looking at is going to be the real thing, immunity. So that's going to be important. And by the way, I'm talking to a lot of countries out there, and they're all talking about immunity passports. That the only way you're going to be able to go there is if you can prove you had COVID, or you prove you got a vaccine when the vaccine comes. And so this is going to add another headache.
Now, what about the fact that, they said kids can fight this a lot stronger and a lot easier than elderly people? Is there any truth to that?
100% truth. If you look around the world, not just in the United States, around the world, it's really hard to find any person under 19 who's died from this. There are less than 10 people around the world. So somehow kids got something special, and we got to find out what that is, obviously. Even between 20 and 30. But you got a lot of people in 20 and 30 who have died. No obvious reason. The big problem, and this is really important for your listeners, if you got some problem, if you're overweight or diabetes or high blood pressure, those diseases somehow are working with the virus and make you much more susceptible both to getting it and to dying from it. And so you got to really watch it if you got some disease going on, because you're not immune from it, even if you're young.
I saw you say somewhere that if you said a vaccine will finally end it, which everybody knows, but some reports are suggesting that the virus is mutating so much that a vaccine may prove elusive. What do you think about that?
That's a worry. We gotta be careful about that, because we know, look, all of us know that the flu, every year you got to get a flu vaccine. Why do you got to get a flu vaccine? Because the virus changes every year. That might be true with coronavirus. The advantage is once we have a platform, once we have a basic vaccine, we probably can adjust it if the virus is mutating in a way that requires a new vaccine. But we first got to prove we can get a vaccine, and we can get a vaccine pretty quickly to end all this economic problem.
Right.
If you were advising Donald Trump right now, what timeline would you say that we should be on? What are some precautions that we should continue to take? What are some things that you would do differently?
Oh, I think we have to keep these precautions in place probably for 6 or 8 more weeks, and then slowly open up. And, to give him credit, his plan did have a slow open up. It had 3 phases. Unfortunately, places like Georgia and South Carolina seem to be rushing it. They didn't read the fine print of the plan that phases. So that probably in 6 or 8 weeks, but we're still going to have to be very vigilant, and we can only open up with more testing. So, there's a yin yang here. You got to have the testing to open up safely. But I think, everyone's talking about 18 months for a vaccine, and they always say, again, the fine print, if everything goes perfectly. Well, when was the last time everything went perfectly in your life or my life? There are many ways many ways the vaccine could get screwed up in production. And that's one of the big challenges.
Let me ask you about that vaccine, right? Because somebody told me, and I don't know if this is true, they said that there is no vaccines for any of the other coronaviruses. So how are they going to develop one for this? Is that even true? Is there no
it's
vaccine?
Partially true, partially not true.
Okay.
So there was a big development of a vaccine for SARS, and that's also a coronavirus, but then SARS went away. And so the push to do it sort of fizzled out. And they have a vaccine that they developed for MERS. That's the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which is carried by camels and then sent to humans. And they have a vaccine for that. But again, rare cases, and so they haven't fully tested it out and proven it. It's hard, and so we shouldn't be overconfident. I think that's what you're getting to is let's not be cocky that, oh, definitely going to have a vaccine in 18 months. Maybe, maybe not. And it's a really hard nut to crack. And, the good thing is we got a ton of scientists around the world working on this, and they're super smart. The bad thing is these little viruses you can't even see aren't even really alive. They're really dangerous.
What are you advising Joe Biden on nowadays?
Mostly about coronavirus. So, yeah. He put together a group of us to give him advice on coronavirus. Also, he's got a whole campaign staff, and they want to know how can they be safe. You don't want to endanger your campaign staff. So we've been working on that. I've been working with him on, his plan about testing. Really important stuff.
I feel like he really dropped the ball, the past few weeks, especially when Trump was out there every day and, he started bringing Dr. Fauci and then Dr. Burke on. I feel like there should have been daily counter programming, and especially when I found out that you was with him. I'm like, he could have been offering daily counter programming to the things Trump was saying just to, provide some comfort and some hope and some optimism to the American people.
You've mentioned at the start, my brothers. I'm not the political brother. I just do the policy stuff. You're going to have to ask that question to my political brother because he knows about. I agree with you. I would like the vice president. First of all, he's really thought about this. He's got great policies, and I would have liked him to be out there. I think you're going to see him out there more in the next few weeks. I think he really, he's thought about this, and the team around him have thought about this. So I'm hoping that they'll show their stuff because I agree, you just can't let the president have these press conferences every day, and especially when he's not always telling it like it is.
Well, who should we believe? It seems like every day there's something new or something different. At first, you didn't need masks because masks were just for hospital and medical people. Then they said everybody should wear a mask. Then they said, well, you shouldn't wear an N95. Then they said if you pass gas, be careful because you can get coronavirus through passing gas. Is that true?
So first of all, you got to wear a mask out in public. Absolutely. Right. Mm-hmm. We did make a mistake, and I think there were weighing risks and benefits. If we tell people to wear masks, first they'll take masks away from the doctors, nurses, and others, and second, they might think they're invincible once they're wearing a mask. That turned out to be a bad mistake, a bad judgment, and it did take the CDC too long to reverse that position. Now, fortunately, they've reversed that position, and I hope wearing a mask is really, becomes the norm, kind of like wearing a seatbelt. No one gets into a car, doesn't put a seatbelt on because it's, then you look irresponsible. Hopefully wearing a mask will be the same thing. I think you're right. Look, this is a brand new virus, mm-hmm. Just 4 months ago, who heard of COVID-19? No one. So it's a brand new virus. And we have to understand that what we know about it is changing all the time. So a lot of the stuff out there is going to turn out to be wrong. People thought it was the right thing, but they had the data wrong. So I think you got to pay attention. That's why you guys are doing, shows on it because people got to pay attention, and the information is going to change day to day.
And what about the passing gas? Was that true? Was the passing gas true that I have
no idea, to be perfectly honest. It's nowhere near as important as your droplets out of your mouth, sneezing, coughing, and speaking, and washing your hands. You know, all of us got to learn how to wash hands. And look, all of us have stopped doing the shoulder bump. We've stopped shaking hands. Life is going to change, and for the long term, not just the short term.
Now, we've also seen that Google and Apple were talking about developing apps where you can tell if you've come into contact with somebody that was coronavirus positive. So do you think that's something that is a great thing, or you think it's something that we should be aware
of? Both. It is a great thing because we do need that information. You know, if say yesterday I came into contact with someone with coronavirus, I need to know that, and I need to think about getting tested in a few days. But I think it's also, you know, if they commercialize it, they violate my privacy, they don't get rid of that data after 45 days, that is a scary prospect. So I think, you know, one of the problems is we don't necessarily trust big tech. They have shown that they're willing to, first of all, tell us one thing and do something different, and they're willing to take our data and, you know, do all sorts of things with it that we wouldn't agree with. So they're going to have to act responsibly. And, you know, so far, I think, you know, we need a little more of them to step up and to help the public health people get a handle on this.
Hey, Doc, you mentioned the mask earlier. Can N95 masks be effectively cleaned and returned for front lines to reuse?
Yes. So and again, this is one of the areas where we've gotten all new people thinking about it and solving problems. You can definitely reuse them and clean them. You know, one of the ways is ultraviolet light, heat, because you got to be careful though. You know, this virus is very sensitive to soap and water and heat. So there are ways.
So heat too now, because at one time they said they didn't know if that was right. They you know, they said that.
Yeah, I know.
The hot weather, they weren't sure if it was reacting to it well or not too much. So now you're saying.
No. So good point, catching me on that, which is, you know, getting the temperature up over 135. I'm not talking about heat, just warm.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't know about warm weather yet, and we're gonna learn a lot this summer. I'm skeptical that warm weather is going to solve a lot of problems because you got coronavirus.
The spring breakers had it.
What?
All those spring breakers had it.
Exactly. Spring breakers, Egypt, Israel, Singapore, places that are warm. So may not be like flu. It may be different in this regard from flu. Got to be careful about it.
What's happening to all the non-coronavirus patients these days? Like, if I get sick, like, should I be afraid of hospitals and doctors? Like, when will that end?
Everyone's asking that question. So I got a good friend who's a researcher at Yale. We went to med school together, and he's like, you know, people turning up with heart attacks way down, almost half. You know, like, did this heart attack suddenly go away? No, we don't know what's happened in that regard. We don't know what's happening. So one of the things my group is looking at is trying to figure out, how are people getting care? I'm a cancer doctor, and so we're worried about our cancer people getting treatment. We know that, like, organ transplants, liver and kidney transplants, gone way down. We know that other kinds of care have gone way down. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. So we need to find out how those patients are dealing and whether it's hurting them, whether some people are dying at home because they were so afraid to go into the hospital. That would be a very bad thing, very bad thing.
Yeah, I know some nurses out in Jersey, man, and they said that it's a lot of coronavirus patients who are having strokes and blood clots. Why is that?
That's a really good point, and I think most of the media, you know, you say information is always changing. Most of the media hasn't reported that, but when I talk to the doctors who are on the front line of the hospitals in Philadelphia, that's also what's happening. And maybe that's related to the diabetes and the hypertension and the obesity, that somehow there's something funny with both the blood vessels and the way the virus activates the clotting system. So you're seeing a lot of strange clots in young people. You know, we had this, I forget who, the Broadway actor who had to have
his leg amputated.
Yeah. And I think clots is something that is unusual about this virus. And again, that's something, maybe the immune system is reacting in a strange way that's leading to clots. So that's another thing that we're going to have to study and figure out, because that could be the way that a lot of people are dying. Not so much the lung problem, but the clotting problem. And as you point out, clotting problem in the heart or kidney or somewhere else that's leading to serious problems. So got to worry about that.
They also told me that patients' blood pressure gets dangerously high in 1 minute and then dangerously low without any interventions. The coronavirus patients.
Yeah, and you're also seeing, you know, I talked to a lot of the docs and they said patients look stable, and then seem to fall off a cliff.
Mhm.
And they don't know exactly why. It might be that they ignited the clotting pathway or the blood pressure went out of control. But again, part of the thing that's frustrating everyone is there's so much uncertainty. There's a brand new disease. We've only been looking at it for, 2.5, 3 months. Don't know a lot.
Right.
Damn.
All right, Doc. Well,
Well, thank
for
you
I just
for-
feel
checking in,
like
Doc.
Yes.
I feel like we kind of screwed Doc for a while. Like we're kind of screwed for a minute.
I think
man.
we
So
are.
everybody
I think
figures out.
we are for a little bit.
Well, I've been teaching a course at college called Rationing and Resource Allocation. And I used to say, sort of, in the 20th century, 1918, 1957, 1968, we had pandemics. And we're kind of due for another one. And I would then say, here's how we have to plan for it. Here's what we have to do. Here's what you have to think about. And then, who thought, all thought it would be an influenza or a flu pandemic. And now we've got this different virus. And it is a big problem. When we had the big flu pandemic in 1918, it lasted, we talk about 1918, 1919, like it was only 2 years, but you can see that people were dying years and years later from the same. And that's what's scary about this situation. Worldwide, we have 7.8 billion people, and we got to get immunity. Otherwise, this thing's going to keep coming back, and it's going to be a serious problem.
Right.
So this is my last question. You said earlier, there are vaccines for other coronaviruses. So you do have hope that they will get a vaccine for this one.
I am optimistic because I think we got a lot of, thousands of super smart scientists working on this, lots of companies working on it, and I think we're going to be able to crack it. Obviously, a lot depends upon that.
Right.
Got
Well,
you.
Doctor, we appreciate you for checking in. Dr. Emanuel, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
thank
you.
Thank you for taking the time for us and for our audience too.
Not at all. Thank you.
And
Take
tell
care.
Ari and Ron, we said peace.
Nice to talk to you guys. I hope you enjoy the book. Give me feedback.
All right,
will.
thank you. It's Dr. Emanuel. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning. Thank you.